So since we're doing something kind of close to Halloween, and it's in October, I figured it would be appropriate to put a pumpkin back here. If you don't want to do a pumpkin, that's fine. But we're literally going to do a wash here. And just for kicks and giggles, let's try to avoid the pumpkin's facial expression. Just for kicks and giggles, okay? Now, wash is a diluted amount or thinned out amount of paint. You're using water to kind of thin it out, to kind of fill spaces in quickly and effectively. You can use washes to fill in things like pumpkins, the body of your critter, or whatever you're focusing on for your artwork. You can also use it for skies. We're actually going to use it for some of the sky or whatnot as well. Now, I don't have to spend a lot of time on my palette because my palette, my orange, is super wet. It's tube paint. Now, if you want a stronger wash and you have dry watercolor, you might need to spend some time in your palette for a few seconds, maybe sing happy birthday once or twice to pick up a stronger amount of orange. But I have tube paint. I'm just using just the corner of my brush. And I'm telling you, with tube paint, a little goes a long way, my friend. If your brush gets dry, just take the tip of your corner here and water bug it or ballerina dance that tip across the surface of your water cup. You don't really want to go too crazy too quickly. If you need more water, then do it again. Just eyeball it. Take your time. Experiment. Is this enough? Do I need more? Before you go, all over your artwork. This is actually dried palette paint. See how I'm kind of, spending some time in here picking it up until I start changing color. I'm just going to do a bush in the background here. But I'm using watered down paint to kind of fill in this green area. I'm going to dab my way in here. Use the corners of my bristles to kind of get where I need to be. Pick some of that up and spread it over here. I figured this would be a little more appropriate than doing a flattened out sky. And you guessed it, friend, while this is drying, we are going to add the sky. Just like we did for our bushes, we are going to do the same thing for our sky. Take a nice wet brush, gather up what color you want for your sky, and let's begin placing it in the background using long, gliding strips of wet paint. Now, if you feel like your paint is too thinned out, feel free to add a few more drops of paint and continue to spread it around. Now, if your watercolor paint is too wet, you can scoop some of that color up and spread it to other areas. That way you don't flood your paper. I'm going to feather my way around my bush, around the stem of my pumpkin. And while I wait for this to dry, I'm going to go back and I'm going to add an additional layer to my bush to give it shadow. So while you're waiting for other areas to dry, it's always wise to work on other areas while you're waiting for it to go through. So we're just going to wait for this top to dry here. And I'm literally going to add another layer of green, yellow green, on top of my bush to create the illusion of shadow. I'm doing that by dabbing. The dabbing technique. Put some over here too. Maybe put a little bit of that darker green in here. There we go. There's my shadow. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. But you do want some sort of different differentiation of light and dark in here to give yourself some depth. Now the dry on dry technique is kind of wicked here because you're using lots of paint, very little water, and your surface is dry too. You know how the pumpkins kind of have like a really kind of dark area? There's a really thin area on the edge of the eye. This probably is going to have a dark area too, honestly. So I'm kind of going for it. So what I'm going to do, I'm also going to add some darkness here to give it more of a three-dimensional look. I'm going to add some darkness underneath his bum, maybe a shadow. Some texture. There we go. And then I'm going to dampen my brush and drag this extra color in. You see that? It's going to give your pumpkin mouth like a glowy look. It's going to be really cool. This dragging part does not require a lot of water. It's literally just a little minuscule drop. Your paint's already kind of wet here, so. Wait for your eyes to dry before you decide to add any more paint. While you're waiting, feel free to just top this off. Okay. And add your stem. We're going to wait for this to dry and then we'll add more of our stem here. little streaks of orangey brown through here to kind of give it some texture. That way he doesn't look like a flat pumpkin. He actually looks like a rounded pumpkin. Let's feather out these edges so there's not any white. We'll go back and add our darker colors for our pumpkin stem. And some more black for the side of the pumpkin. Darkest point of the pumpkin's mouth. Yeah. That, my friend, is how you draw a toad or a frog, depending on what you want, using a combination of watercolor techniques.